My election in 2017 was hard. I talked to a lot of voters who said nobody had knocked on their door before, nobody had asked them to vote, and fundamentally felt like no matter who was elected, their lives hadn't changed in any real way. I think that is true for a lot of voters, especially voters who might align with, say, the Democratic Party, but they fundamentally feel no matter who's elected, even if it's a Democrat, they don't really see the changes impact their own life. So when I think about how we engage people with voting and why people don't vote, I think of a number of reasons. So one is disinformation. I think sharing the disinformation that we hear both through social media and the media is a really effective way to suppress people's votes. Disbelief in whether somebody's vote will count or not, especially in a presidential election where we have an electoral college system. Voter intimidation, and that means anything from how complex the voting process is, the ID requirements we have here in the state of Georgia, not understanding the language assistance that's available to voters or the assistance in general that's available to voters. And then I think one of the biggest ones that I've seen in Georgia is just creating a lack of confidence in the system in terms of whether or not your vote is going to count. And the state of Georgia has done a really good job of that. Specifically, as we're seeing campaigns transition, as we are adapting to how we vote and how we engage politically, one of the messaging points that I have heard over and over and over again is the false notion that using mail-in voting creates massive voter fraud. That is the kind of disinformation that is used specifically to suppress the vote so that people lose confidence in the system of voting. One of the things I think is most important is to push back against these narratives constantly. I will say it over and over again in committee meetings, to my constituencies, on social media. Mail-in voter fraud does not exist in any meaningful way. If you look at the percentages of voter fraud, period, they don't even come up to 1%. It's like 0.008 or something. It is so incredibly obsolete, and everybody knows it. So I think pushing back against that is extremely important. And the other piece of it is we know that both sides of the aisle use vote by mail. And the more these false messaging points are pushed out, the more people lose confidence in the system as a whole. And that is the most powerful form of voter suppression, is when you lose confidence in the system and you wonder if your vote is going to count. And, we have a lot of people working on the ground to make sure our votes are going to count. And we have to do everything we can, front piece of voter registration, paying attention to the voter purges, to the education, to early voting, mail-in voting, election day voting, and in the aftermath.